of the SDG Investment Fair. As you know, this is a forum where governments and private investors come together to align commercially viable investment opportunities with the Sustainable Development Goals. I want to particularly welcome members of the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance. My name is Bettina Prato. I am a lead policy and technical advisor to the Associate Vice President for Programs at the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, which is a specialized United Nations agency and international financial institution working in the sector of agriculture and more broadly rural development. This is the third and final day of this fair, and as anticipated in the chat, this is a session that focuses on country investment opportunities. A spotlight is on Equatorial Guinea. In the next 45 minutes, we will hear a representative of the government of Equatorial Guinea to present to us 3 investment opportunities, 1 in ecotourism and 2 in agribusiness. So in a sector that I also happen to be particularly interested and involved in. We will have the opportunity to reflect on this presentation together with also 2 distinguished panelists that I'm really happy to have with me today. One is Marco Serena, also a fellow Italian, Group Head of Sustainable Development Impact at the Private Infrastructure Development Group. Welcome, Marco. And Krishnan Sharma, who is the Chief of Unit in DESA, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations, very much involved also with the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance. Let me remind you all to please use the chat to pose your questions, your comments. I will be monitoring it throughout the presentation, the conversation, so that we can feed questions into the discussion as they come up. I believe we may have a pre-recorded message from the government, but if not, and there's no sign to that effect, I would proceed by giving the floor in the first instance to Anna Pont, who is the UN Resident Coordinator in Equatorial Guinea. Please, can you please take the floor to offer some opening remarks? Thank you. I can see you sort of.
Can you see me? No, I think I believe we're going to. So I'm Anna Pont, the UN Resident Coordinator for Equatorial Guinea, and I think we are going to pass you straight on to the government intervention. I would just like to thank DESA very much for providing these kinds of opportunities and connecting regions to have this kind of dialogue around development finance. It's very important for us at the country level and to be able to present country level initiatives. So I pass it over to the government.
Thank you. So let me introduce then the main speaker we have today. It's Mr. Florentino Benke-Dugan, Head of Section for Global and Sectoral Development at the Ministry of Finance, Economy and Planning. Sir, you have about 20 minutes for your presentation. I see you are connected, although you're not on video. So I leave it to you to share your slides or to the Secretariat. Will you be sharing your slides, sir?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello. Welcome.
Yes, as previously mentioned, my name is Florentino Benke-Dugan, and I'm going to be the one in charge of this, our first presentation in this investment fair. We are pleased to be here and just ready to start.
I have to look to the technical support team to advise about how the slides are going to be shared.
Florentino, are you going to share the slides or do you need Dessa to share the slides?
Hey, Javi, please, can you share with us, please, as that was what we decided yesterday. Please, can you project for us?
Thank you. 1 minute.
No problem. Apologies for the slight delay. There we go. Thank you. So, sir, you can begin.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2022 SDG Investment Fair, Sustainable Development Goals in Equatorial Guinea. As previously mentioned, my name is Florentino Benkedugan, Head of Global and Sectoral Development Section in Ministry of Finance. I'm going to be the one in charge of this first presentation for Equatorial Guinea. Please go. Our table of content consists of. Please, can you revert a bit? Can you return to our table of content, please? Our table of content consists of 4 points, which we are going to be presenting here today. The first one consists of a brief description on our sustainable commitment. The second one on our country information. The third one on our project. In this section of our project, we are going to dedicate more time because the reason why we are here today is to take our project to the world and make sure we bring some investors home. And then on the last one, that's where we're going to be taking our time just to thank everyone for their attention and for being here and listening to us. Please, next. Our sustainable commitment. During the third National Economic Conference in 2019, and as a sign of the country commitment to the appropriation of the 2030 agenda, the SDGs were included in Equatorial Guinea 2035 agenda. The third SEN was a participatory planning exercise involving all sectors of the society that align the development plan with the 2030 agenda and the 2063, which is the African Union agenda. Under the guidelines of this plan, the National Monitoring Commission of the 2035 agenda and the SDG was created. This mission carried out a national framework of indicators adopted in 2020. As a result of this framework, Equatorial Guinea has a development plan aligned with the SDGs as follows. Our National Sustainable Development Strategy 2035 consists of 4 axes. Axis number 1, poverty eradication. Axis number 2, social inclusion and sustainable peace. Axis number 3, productivity and industrialization. And the last one, axis number 4, environmental sustainability. Those 4 compose our National Sustainable Development Plan or a strategy for the 2035. Please, next. Our country information. Equatorial Guinea is a Central African country comprises of Rio Muni mainland and a volcanic offshore island. Malawi on Bioko Island is the capital and it has an estimated population of 1,558,160 inhabitants and covers an area of 28,052 kilometers squared, with an exclusive economic zone of 340,000 kilometers squares. It should be noted that the sea area is 10 times our land area, providing the government, the country of Equatorial Guinea, some natural resources and rich maritime fauna. Also, to be mentioned, our international membership. It is very important for our future associate not to only focus on Equatorial Guinea market, but to also have a vision placed on the sub-region. As a member of the CEMAC community, there's a potential market of superior of 40 million inhabitants. And as a member of the CPLP, which is the Portuguese speaking community, we have a potential market of more than 200 million inhabitants. Please, can we move to the next one? Equatorial Guinea have 3 official languages known as Spanish, French, and Portuguese. Our main sectors are hydrocarbons, mining and industry, farming and fishing, services, and construction. One of the most exploited sectors here are construction and hydrocarbons. But in terms of reference for the others, it's still yet not explored. So that's a huge opportunities for those interested in those areas. Our milestones, we successfully managed to build 5 airports, 9 ports. The government of Equatorial Guinea have successfully managed to take electricity to 95% of the national territory. It's not only the capacity that the success of taking electricity to the larger part of the country, but yes, we also managed to have to be the country in the sub-region with more stability in electricity. And also very important to mention here is that we are compromised with clean energy, 0 emission. 75% of the tourist infrastructure has already been implemented by construction of massive hotels, roads, park and reserve areas with an eye put on tourism. Please, next. Our investment policies. 75% of Equatorial Guinean goals are aligned with the SDGs. We are open to positive investment share. We successfully managed to reduce to a minimum wage the requirement liability. We successfully managed to reduce to the minimum capital requirement for limited liabilities companies as other members. We successfully also managed to establish a business one-stop shop, which is the agency in charge of company registration in Equatorial Guinea. For those that operated here before, they will know that it used to be a huge challenge to have your company fully registered. Back in the days, it used to take above 60 days. And nowadays, we successfully managed to cut it to 10 days. So within 10 days, you can have your company operating in Equatorial Guinea with everything under control. Also, to be mentioned, significant effort have been made in the public finances in order to fight against corruption, transparency, and the computerization and the informatization of the public sector. Please, next. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce our 3 projects to you. Our park of project is composed of the cassava flour and starch factory, as the number 1 project. The number 2 is the Resort Lake Mocha, and the number 3 is the poultry plant. All these projects, we have tried our best to make sure that the project brought into this fair today, all of them are aligned with the SDGs, making sure that we keep our commitment and we keep working for a better Equatorial Guinea. Please, next. African cassava is an important source of nutrition and income for more than 300 million people. Cassava starch is used in industrial food and pharmaceutical products. This project goes aligned with SDG 1, 2, 8, 12, and 17. Please, next. What's the social impact of this project? With this project, we have discovered that this project will assist and help Equatorial Guinea to move one step forward in line with its goals and objectives by following the 2030 agenda, which is the one of the United Nations, the 2035 our agenda, and the African Union 2063. With this project, we'll be creating jobs. We will try to turn around the migration from rural areas, from towns to rural areas, which, as many people know, we're more familiar with people living in rural areas for better living in the cities. This will have a direct contribution to our national economic growth and will also help industrializing our agricultural sector. Please, next. This is our second project, Resort Lake Mocha, which is cultural diversity and natural beauty. Equatorial Guinea is the ideal tourist destination. This project aims to provide the modern infrastructure needed to make national tourism more attractive and profitable. This project goes aligned with SDG 1, 8, 9, 13, 14, 15, and 17. Please, next. The social impact of this project, the project will help us encourage Equatorial promotion, job creation, sector innovation, and a responsible use of the ecosystem. Please, next. And lastly, this is our third project, the last one, our poultry plant. The poultry plant project is pioneering in Equatorial Guinea, given its size and output capacity, with a volume of 1 million birds per year. This plant covers 70% of local demand, with an eye toward expanding into the sub-region. The project goes aligned with SDG 1, 2, 8, 9, 12, and 17. Please, next. The social impact of this project will create jobs. This project will help us to innovate in the farming sector and will also help us in the responsible use of the ecosystem. Please, next. It is useless to set objectives of this. There are no agreement between all sectors that must participate: government, private companies, and citizens. In this sense, it is essential to foster partnership to combine effort and resources and make the SDGs a reality. With the implementation of this project in Equatorial Guinea, we believe that the country will take a big leap in achieving the 2030, 2035, and 2063 agendas. I would like to motivate you to take advantage of this new path outlined by the Equatorial Guinean government in its desire to diversify, industrialize, and achieve sustainable economy in order to achieve the objective of the 2035 agenda, and thus make the public and private partnership a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benkedugan. I think it may be useful as we move along with the session also maybe to go back to some of the slides, as there was some detail about the specific investment opportunities you presented that may be of interest for follow-up among participants. But in the meantime, thank you for this introductory presentation. I would like to go to Krishnan Sharma first to ask, what are your reflections, your thoughts on the basis of what you heard? Perhaps also, also some questions for clarification, but also some reflections, comments that may be useful to the presenter, that may be useful to frame what was just presented as three really interesting investment opportunities. I will then go to Marco Serena next. So you have four or 5 minutes maybe to offer some of your thoughts, Krishnan. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Bettina. Can you hear me? Great. Fantastic.
Very well.
Firstly, thank you very much to Mr. Benke for a very interesting presentation. By way of introducing myself, I worked in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, focusing particularly on private finance and investment for the past 2 decades. And I used to be an organizer of the SDG Investment Fair. Right now, I work closely with the GISD Alliance. It's an alliance of 30 business leaders from across the world looking at solutions to scale up finance and investment for the SDGs. So my comments and questions will center around some key issues pertaining to SDG investment, but which are applicable to the 3 projects, and I'm making them in my individual capacity. So firstly, I mean, Mr. Benke, the presenter outlined very clearly, I mean, the impact of the projects in advancing the SDGs. In fact, what we're concerned about, firstly, is the impact of the project in advancing the SDGs, the viability of the investments and the interest for investors, and also broader country level conditions and what the solutions are. So beginning with the impact of the projects in advancing the SDGs, Mr. Benke clearly outlined that they are aligned, in fact, with the National Sustainable Development Strategy of the country for 2035. I mean, that these sectors are very aligned with that. But in the context of these projects, I mean, the question is, how impactful are these specific projects? I mean, social impact was mentioned, but have specific economic and social and environmental impact studies been undertaken? What are the linkages in particular to local companies and suppliers? For example, in the case of the project of the cassava project, how well connected are the local farmers? In the case of the tourist camp, have environmental impact studies been undertaken? Are there numbers here? What is critical here is that we can speak about benefits, but there's also the issue of costs. And what is important is that net benefits need to outweigh the cost. And the GISD Alliance, in fact, has arrived at a definition for what constitutes sustainable development investment, which is namely that the positive contribution of the investment in advancing the SDGs should outweigh the negative impacts. So, if a little more information could be given here. And of course, I mean, the important question in all of this is, how does these projects compare with their competitors? Is there any scoring mechanism for investability and returns and so forth? So that is the first broad issue. The second relates to the viability of the investments. And here we first deal with the type of financing required. I mean, what type of financing and investment are we looking at? And in particular, I mean, what is the rationale for attracting foreign private finance? Are there other possibilities for finance also being looked at? Public finance, concessional finance, public-private partnerships. What are the realms of possibilities here? And once again, there's also the issue of the viability of projects, which I touched on. And an example is a tourist camp. I mean, which it's a great idea, but how solid is the surrounding infrastructure for this tourist camp in terms of roads, hotels, restaurants, and so forth? I mean, and also, I mean, what is the support here? In the case of all the three projects, I mean, that one can expect from the government, from multilateral development banks, from the donors, and so forth. So that deals with the second issue of the viability of investments. Thirdly, of course, I mean, country level conditions were mentioned, but what investors would be concerned about is specific issues relating to country level risks and the enabling environment, and how accessible the broad information is. For example, do credit rating agencies cover Equatorial Guinea? Because ratings are quite important. It is great to see some figures. I mean, literacy 96%, electricity coverage, health, all extremely important. But how can we get that information out to investors? How accessible is that information? I mean, and that's a question that we need to ask, which leads me to my final point, which is support from the international community. What can be done here to make this information, the relevant information, more accessible to investors? How can the multilateral development banks and other donors help? In the case of this and other projects as well, co-financing, guarantees, development of country platforms, capacity building, and scoring mechanisms, what I referred to earlier, that sort of compass projects, assessing their investability. This is something that the audience may also have some thoughts and ideas about. I mean, and also investors, any investors in the audience, I mean, what measures would they like to see, and how can they assist here? So overall, I mean, thanks very much for the presentation. And the key thing really, of course, as we all know, is to identify projects, I mean, that both advance the SDG priorities of the country and also have the viability to attract private financing. I mean, and of course, we need support in all of this from other actors in terms of addressing sort of obstacles relating to perceptions and country level broader enabling environments. Thank you very much.
Krishnan, thank you for quite a set of really substantive, also some challenging points. I wonder whether it would be better maybe to pick up on some of those, as they are quite a few. I look to Mr. Benkedugan to indicate, would you like to address some of these, or would you like me to go to the other panelist and then maybe pick up some of the points from both of them that you, is that the second, your preferred option? Should I go to the second panelist first? Yeah?
Well, actually, I prefer just, okay, let me just answer this first one, then we'll move to the next one, please.
Sounds good. Please go ahead.
So, Mr. Sharma, thank you very much for your observation. As I previously mentioned, the government of Equatorial Guinea for the past 20 years, especially on the first phase of our national development plan, we actually focus our development was focused on putting the infrastructure in place for the adoption of the second phase, which we actually going into now. The government have made some significant construction when it comes to tourist, actually in the tourist sector, we have significant hotels. When it comes to roads, we have a lot of roads that can take you countrywide. Same as I did mention the electricity, I did mention some other things that the government have actually succeeded in that implementation. But right now, as you said, yes, it is true. Investors are looking for liability. They are looking for guarantees. They are looking for security. I can ensure, taking note on the position in which Equatorial Guinea is nowadays, after the first phase of our national development plan, we have reoriented. We completely reoriented the direction in which we used to go to where we want to go nowadays. We adopted the diversification plan as how can I say it? The government have decided to divest our economy through a PPP partnership, which means private-public partnership. We are ready. Significant measurements have been put in place to make sure Equatorial Guinea reputation, Equatorial Guinea ranking in the doing business gets better. All that just to please our potential investors, for those that maybe one day they may be interested in coming to operate in Equatorial Guinea. There have been many decisions taken, many reforms internally, which I just put in our future investors. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this initial reaction. Maybe I'll come back on one of the points that Krishnan you raised and that I also had in mind, which is about what type of finance is being sort of sought. Sort of what different types of what kind of package of sources of finance are you looking for the different investment opportunities? But let me come first to Marco. You also come from a perspective of, the investor community yourself. So what are your thoughts based on this presentation, this conversation? Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Banker, for the presentation. Really useful to get to learn more about the diversification strategy. I think as I was listening to the presentation and also researching a bit more around the country before this meeting, I think one key thing for an investor would be, where do these fit into the priorities? It goes a bit back to the, how do these projects rank? Why are they important to the economy of the country? Why are they priorities for the country? And I think there's space there to build a bit on the alignment on the SDG. But maybe just let me give 30 seconds about the, as introduction about the organization I represent. So I work for the Private Infrastructure Development Group. We are an infrastructure investor. We were set up initially by a group of governments with public money, and now progressively we're attracting private money at a fund level. And one of the characteristics of the Private Infrastructure Development Group is that we operate across the full spectrum of finance for the infrastructure investment. So from very early stages, project development, to long-term debt, 20, 25 years debt. And we also can offer guarantees to local banks in local currencies. And we've got a TA arm. And I think it's probably useful to reflect on the type of questions that we would ask as an investor looking at these opportunities. We're also an impact investor, so we're looking for opportunities that benefit both people in terms of users of infrastructure, create jobs, as well as minimize risk on the environment and possibly maximize benefits. So I think the interesting points for us will be, in addition to the macroeconomic indicators of the country, would also be what's the relevance of the country in terms of, for example, the protection of natural resources, of forests, of marine biodiversity, and how do these projects link to that? Because we would see that projects that can combine creation of jobs in country with that are nature positive or contribute to conservation as very attractive. And we know that the country, Equatorial Guinea, has taken steps if you're looking at the number of area under protection, etc. So I think it would be useful to, in an investor presentation, to articulate that even more, given the specific place that Equatorial and the role that Equatorial Guinea can play. But the questions I would have are on the investment themselves are really the basic investor questions. So who are the key parties involved in these projects? Are Are these government projects or are they private sector sponsors already? Where are the private sector sponsors from? Have they got track record in that sector? We would then think of, because obviously for us it would be who do we go into business with, and be extremely clear about that. We would think about the revenue streams, where do they come from? So for example, if I look at the tourist project, what's the target market? What's the current level of tourism in country? What are the revenues in country? What are the projected revenues of this? What are the economics of the cable car there? Is there a revenue stream from the use, etc.? So this would be another key consideration. And then what stage the projects are at? Are they advanced and ready for financing, in which case we will think about our debt arm or our guarantee arm, or at the very early stage, in which case we will think about us as an equity investor in the project. It goes back a bit to the type of finance that you would be looking for. But hopefully that's helpful. These are basic investor questions, but these would be the ones that maybe in also in other presentations it would be useful to articulate a little bit more in terms of the slides.
Thank you, Marco. I wonder whether it's useful to take also the projects one by one in addressing some of these questions. Who are the partners? At what stage of development are they? Sort of who is what type of financing is being sought? Are these totally sort of greenfield activities? Are they still at a sort of proof of concept phase, or have already some investments been made? But there is also a broader question on, are there any relevant policies, related to environment, so conservation, etc., that are particularly relevant to mention? So let me pose this question first, because there was a reference to the commitments of the government to sort of a very robust, environmentally sustainable agenda in the energy space. Maybe if there are other relevant policies that would be more relevant, for example, for the tourism, the ecotourism project, is there something you'd like to mention? Otherwise, I leave it to you sort of to address the points raised by Marco as you see fit. So over to you. Sorry. Over to you, Mr. Benkedugan.
Actually, in the level that we are now today, our colleagues, I think Marco did ask for the level of ecotourism locally. As I previously mentioned, we are in a position nowadays, we are in a position today in which we are decided, okay, we have decided to take our country to the world. We have decided to diverse our economy by focusing our energy on ecotourism and tourism, industrialization of the country, and some other sustainable goals that can actually help our country reduce the dependence from the oil and gas. With this, what I can say is that certain measures may have been put in place in the area of tourism. The government have clearly made some significant reforms. Yeah, they have adopted some policies to facilitate the implementation of the e-visa program. The e-visa program has already been approved, and very soon it's going to be implemented. I believe in the position that we are nowadays, all we're looking for, and also bear in mind that the infrastructure has already been there. The country kind of somehow looking for partners that are ready to come and exploit what we have. The infrastructure is already there. We are looking for partners that can come and say, you know what, you have this. This is how this is what we can do, and this is going to be sort of some sort of it's a win-win business. The infrastructure is already there. We are looking for partners that are ready to come and tell us, you have this can be explored, the country will benefit from jobs, the country will benefit from knowledge, the country will benefit from A, B, C, D, and then we work together. But as previously mentioned, we believe we are on the correct line, and we, the government, have adopted the policy of selling the country, taking the country out there, making sure we invest in sustainable sectors. And clearly I can say it, yes, there we are, and we're going to get it.
Thank you for this response. I think what I take from the conversation is that, you know, there's space for co-creation or co-shaping or fine-tuning, let's say, of these investment opportunities. You know, these are presented at a fairly broad concept that as I understand, you know, there is scope for going into some of the areas of further refinement, both in terms of financial structuring and in terms of the actual development of the investment opportunity. I'm thinking about also some of the you know, ex-ante impact assessment studies that Krishnan, you were referring to. So that is, you know, that is something that is quite important also to be clear about. Any additional very quick points that any of you two panelists would like to raise here? Otherwise, I have one question, but it's more of a non-technical question. So I leave it to you first. Krishnan, any additional short point or recommendation?
Sure, certainly. Just a quick point. And firstly, congratulations for a strategy to diversify the economy. I was interested to hear about the plans for PPPs. Now PPPs are an important tool, but they have a mixed record. They've been successful in some sectors more than other sectors. And it's also extremely important that, you know, there is a fair sharing of risks, in fact, between the investors and the countries. Otherwise, you could end up with contingent liabilities. So in that respect, a number of organizations have provided guidelines on PPPs, ranging from the UN to the World Bank and others. I mean, you know, so I was wondering, I mean, firstly, I mean, which sectors is Equatorial Guinea planning to support PPPs? And in particular, are they working with any sort of multilateral development banks in terms of the guidelines for setting in place these PPPs? Thank you.
So I'll turn that into a comment because we don't have time to address it. So I'll turn it into a recommendation to look into also the guidance that some of the multilaterals are providing in this regard. Sorry, I know I'm you know, tweaking your words, but I'm conscious of time, so very important to consider this. Marco, any last point or recommendation, suggestion to the government sponsor of these opportunities?
Again, interesting opportunities to explore. I think from an investor perspective, the key thing would be to have some entrepreneurs to partner with. So I think the partnership with entrepreneurs in country, I think, is an important one. So if you can present that partnership already between government and business, that would help an investor come in my view.
Thank you. Very important point. Any last parting word from your side? Also, Mr. Benkedugan?
Yes, please. What I'm about to say is that in reference to the other two projects, what Equatorial Guinea is actually intending to achieve here, we're intending to reduce in a very significant way the volume of importation. So because we have identified that we really, if they allow me to say, we are really dependent on what comes from out. So we are really committed. We have decided to make sure we focus on our energy from here to the next 5 years or 10 years, achieve in a very significant way the reduction of the import goods to the country. And also, please, I would like the video to be played as they really play, please. If they could just play that video so that we can actually have a more wider view of what we actually intend to sell to everyone here. Please.
Great, thank you. I have to wrap up. I feel like we've rushed through these 45 minutes. You know, a lot to find you know, below the surface that we've just scratched. So thank you for presenting. Thank you for commenting to all the speakers. I have to hand the floor to Barry Kolotkin to introduce the team that will now present the opportunities related to Malawi. So it's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. And over to you, Barry.
Thank you so much, Bettina, and thank you everyone for a really interesting panel. I'd like to thank our moderator, our panelists, and of course the presenter, Mr. Florentino Benke Dugan from Equatorial Guinea. And I hope you all will continue to stay with the SDG Investment Fair, as it now is featured 3 times a year, and we have all sorts of interesting investment opportunities. What I'd like to do next is introduce a new feature for the SDG Investment Fair. We're going to do something called a spotlight presentation. In our next fair in September, Malawi will be making a formal presentation of its investment opportunities. But we thought we might want to introduce Malawi to you, and they're going to do a short 15-minute presentation or so, just to introduce you to Malawi in the hopes that you will come back in September and learn more about Malawi's investment opportunities. So with that, I'd like to introduce our featured presenter, who is Dr. Grace Kunchulesi. She is the Director for Development Planning at the National Planning Commission in Malawi. So with that, Dr. Kunchulesi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Barry, and really thankful for inviting Malawi to make this spotlight presentation at this SDG Investment Fair. So just like Barry has mentioned, this presentation is going to be somewhat different from the previous country presentations, because the presentation is going to be very brief and very broad. We are not going to go into specifics in terms of the projects and what projects have to offer at this point, but we are hopeful and we have the expectation that in September, we are going to go in detail and go more specific about the investment opportunities that we have. So to start, maybe I can ask if Barry can share the screen. Or do you want me to share from this end? I can do that.
Sarah and team, do we have the slides or?
Yes, I'm pulling them up. 1 second.
Great, thank you so much. We'll share them and hopefully that'll work for you, Grace. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can go to the next slide. So to start with, Malawi is located in the southern part of Africa. And we like to say that Malawi is land-linked, which gives it a direct access to several high and preferential markets because of the countries that surround it. So we are talking about people from the neighboring Mozambique, Zambia, as well as Tanzania, but also people that are coming from countries that are in the regional blocks, like in the SADC and also COMESA. The population of Malawi is about 18.6 million people, and most of these are young, energetic people. So already, this is good news for our investors because they provide a great resource when you are requiring skills, but also looking for productivity. So currently, our GDP per capita is around 640 US dollars, but we are looking to increase this to about 1,000 US dollars. We are really looking to graduate our country into a middle income economy by the year 2030, and that is what we have captured in our medium-term development plan. So we are also looking at meeting most of the sustainable development goals by 2030. So these have been captured in our recently launched national vision, which we call Malawi 2063. So our aspiration is to become an inclusively wealthy and self-reliant nation by the year 2063. And so we are embracing all development efforts that are going to help us achieve this aspiration. And that is why we are encouraging investors to come to our beautiful country. If you can go to the next slide, you see that Malawi offers such a natural, scenic beauty, both for business and leisure. So whether you like the sea, whether you like the mountain, or anything in between, such as wildlife, we have all that to offer, including friendly and warm Malawians. So we do have investment opportunities in a number of key sectors, and all these are aligning to sustainable development goals. So like, for example, if you go to the next slide, you see that one of the investment opportunities that we have that can really help us graduate our country into a middle income economy, but also achieve most of the sustainable development goals, this being the last decade of action. We're thinking that agriculture sector is one of those key sectors. Currently, it is a sector that is anchoring our economy, and it contributes around 23% to GDP. So we are really looking at going commercializing our agriculture sector. And various investment opportunities that are there are in agro-processing, value addition. If you can help us develop our mega farms, there are also investment opportunities in irrigation infrastructure. All that is there. And we are also looking at diversifying our agriculture sector to go beyond currently where we are dominating, which is in crop production, but we now want to go into fisheries. We want to intensify operations, productivity, and commercialization in fisheries and also in livestock. And we also want to go beyond the traditional crops. So that's one area. Another sector is in mining. So mining sector, as it is now, it's almost prime. It's like so many opportunities that we have not tapped on. And currently, this sector is only contributing around 1% to GDP. But we see a lot of potential to increase our GDP to 10% by the year 2030. And that is the reason why we are encouraging you to also invest in this mining sector. Then the manufacturing sector is also another sector, which is actually standing central in our development agenda. So currently, there's also not so much production going on, but there are a lot of opportunities, investment opportunities in textile and apparel manufacturing, quite a lot of opportunities in value addition and agro-processing. We are looking at dairy products, vegetable oil, manufacturing vegetable oil, and a lot more, including fruit and vegetable canning. So if you as an investor can come to Malawi and support our manufacturing sector, we'll equally support you. And if you can go to the next slide, you also see that tourism also has a lot of potential. And as you can see, it is also aligning to quite a number of sustainable development goals. We have our beautiful Lake Malawi, and there is almost untapped investment opportunities in developing water-based sports facilities, conferencing facilities, even hotels. Quite a lot that can be done that is currently not being done, or perhaps it is not being done to the fullest potential. Our financial sector is also another area where our investors are invited to come and do business. So because we are really looking to have a vibrant and modern financial sector, the one that can be supported by modern and digital technologies, because you saw how COVID-19 really limited us in how we do business. Most of the businesses currently, as it is in Malawi, just relies mostly on physical, like meeting and things like those. Not so much that can be done remotely. So if the financial sector can be developed to help us do business digitally, and also in a manner that cannot leave anyone behind, that kind of investment can also be supported. We are looking at developing our economic infrastructure. Specifically, we are looking at developing our energy sector, our transport system, and also our ICT. We want to encourage investors that can help us diversify our energy capacity to about 2,000 megawatts by 2030. We want investors that can help us to have that multimodal kind of transport system that is going to, roads, rail, water, and sea. Those ones will be supported. So if you can go next, you actually see these things that I'm talking about in the transport sector, as well as in the ICT sector, including transport-wise. In the transport sector, there's also opportunities for to support logistics, investment opportunities in developing our ports, as well as our jetties. Yeah, so you can go next. Yeah, so basically all those sectors that I have talked about, you clearly saw that they are aligning to the one or more sustainable development goals, but also most importantly, they are also aligning to our national development agenda, which we call Malawi 2063. So you ask as an investor, what is in it for me? Why should I come to Malawi to invest? So what I can say is that we believe that you are supporting our development agenda. And so we'll be there to support you all we can in all the areas that you need to be supported, so that at least we have a win-win situation. And so you find that, for example, we could offer certain incentives like tax incentives and other incentives to make sure that at least you are also confident and comfortable to invest in Malawi with the assurance that you are going to get a big return out of it. Another thing is that you be assured that Malawi is a peaceful, secure, and stable, has a stable political climate. We have not had any history of war or civil wars or terrorism. So that's also one of the benefits of coming to invest in Malawi. Our labor market is very competitive, and it also has young, trainable, and also affordable labor force. So all those are opportunities for you if you would like to come to invest in Malawi. So we do have proof. If you go next, you'll see that there is quite a number of investors that have come to Malawi, and they have flourished. So they do find Malawi to be a profitable investment destination. So whether they're thinking about foreign direct investment, for example, or public-private partnerships, we do have all those options for our potential investors. we have some of these investors that we have listed here. They have been with us for decades, for quite a number of decades, and some of them are even listed on the Malawi Stock Exchange. So you can actually see that we do have proof that it is quite profitable to come and invest in Malawi in a more sustainable manner. And then I think I'm going to be wrapping up now. So if you can go to the next slide. I'm just saying that you are welcome to come and invest in our beautiful country, which we call the warm heart of Malawi, the warm heart of Africa. Please come and invest with confidence. But I know that this was a very brief and very broad presentation, but I do hope that it has given you that appetite to come back in September and listen more to the specific projects that will then be bankable at that point, and then see what it is that you can support us to reach our aspiration as you also make money out of the money that you are investing. So with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumchulesi. That was both a very informative presentation and, as you said, the warm heart of Africa, a very warm presentation. And I hope everyone will come back in September because I think there's a lot going on in Malawi. What I particularly liked to hear was that it was strategic. You mentioned self-reliance, diversification, and sustainability. 3 of the areas that Malawi wants to expand in, tourism, manufacturing, and the financial services, will help support those other sectors. And finally, you've had successful PPPs, which is a great indicator of success for investors. Last thing before we close the fair, which is if anyone wants to follow up with any of the presenters, please contact us at UNDESA. You can email us at sdgifair, that's all one word, at un.org. It's also in the chat, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with any of the people sponsoring investment opportunities. My thanks again to Dr. Kumchulesi. My thanks again to all my colleagues at UNDESA, to all the moderators, panelists, presenters, the countries, Colombia, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, Malawi, Guatemala, El Salvador. Thank you so much for presenting at the fair. This concludes the April 22 Investment Fair. Please come back in September. We'll have more information to you in between then. And again, thank you very much, and thank you for participating in the fair.